metta. And then we'll go into our reading today. And I'm feeling kind of tender. I'm going to tell you all that right now. You know, just a lot going on in my life, in the world that I'm feeling kind of sensitive to. So for myself and my own practice, I really do want to make space for the tenderness I'm feeling. Okay. Let's invite our beautiful chime to sing. Welcome, everyone. This is Satiseva. My name is Julia, and I facilitate this beautiful gathering. I'd like to set the intention for our practice today. You know, that is a very traditional thing to do whenever we come into the presence of the Dharma, whether it's in the form of a sutra or mindfulness, whatever it is, it's important to take a moment and reflect on what is my intention for being here today? What is the motivation? So that I can stay true, I can stay sincere and genuine in my presence. So this is the little doodly painting. I love how bright and bubblegum pink it is. This one reads, "May I stand at precarious edges and notice the strawberries." May I stand at precarious edges and notice the strawberries. Does everybody know that parable? Do you all know the parable of the tiger and the strawberry? No? This is a very old one, and I'll take a moment to share it with you as a way of creating space in the mind and softening the heart, because that's what we've been working with in our Satiseva practice. So I'm just going to take a minute and close my eyes. And I'd like to tell you this parable of the tiger and the strawberry, but it requires a little bit of imagining. And so imagine you're in an environment where there are tigers. So think of a lush forest, green, full of broad-leafed, waxy plants, wet, humid. And it's really amazing in these environments, which I have not visited myself. I've only witnessed this on the telly, how camouflaged bright orange tigers are, striped tigers, in this environment. And they really are. It's amazing. So imagine you're on a path. You're not riding an elephant. You're on foot. And you encounter a tiger. A tiger that is on the other side of a stream, just enjoying a drink. And you slowly back up from the kitty kitty. Yo, kitty kitty, we're just gonna get away from you, and slowly back up. And then, of course, the nervous system knows to flee. So you begin to run, but you're getting chased by the tiger. And you come to the edge of a little cliff, and the tiger's gone. You climb down the cliff a little bit. There are these big giant roots, almost like banyan tree roots growing, and you can hold on to them to get away from the edge, kind of hide from the tiger that you think is above you. But lo and behold, for some strange reason, the tiger isn't above you. The tiger is below. And the tiger is right there pacing. You are hanging on by these roots and you look delicious to this tiger. And in this moment, the roots begin to give way, and you realize that the soil on the edge of this cliffside is dry and crumbly, and the weight of your body is breaking the security of these roots. And slowly, slowly, you are dropping toward this hungry tiger. And then, in a moment of pristine clarity, right next to you, growing from this really conflicted place, dry, direct sun, kind of depleted looking soil, is a little tiny wild strawberry plant with a single perfectly ripe strawberry. And this moment of presence with this tiger pacing beneath you, with the roots beginning to give way, you pluck that little strawberry and fully savor its burst of sweetness. And this story is meant to be a metaphor and an illustration for being in the present moment, really enjoying and savoring what's there. Challenges, life-threatening situations, all of it. And there, if you're paying attention, there may be something beautiful and bright and delicious and refreshing there too. So that's the story of the tiger and the strawberry. So may I stand at precarious edges and notice the strawberries. For anybody who is following along or even new today, we use this book, Satiseva, Reimagining Recovery and Support. And we are in chapter 3, the mindfulness practice of space. And we're on page 71. And one of the things that we did last time was we did a little practice of inquiry, which is the practice of inquiry throughout the Satiseva book is all kinds of questions, just lists and lists of questions. And my motivation for writing the questions, as strange as this may sound, isn't necessarily to discover the answer. It is more of a practice of softening and opening the mind and the heart. It is a way of cultivating curiosity and wonder. It's also a way of staying present to a bit of questioning, a bit of inquiry, and not knowing, and being okay not knowing. And if you're not okay not knowing, then to use the power of inquiry to investigate that, to be curious about that. Well, look at me pushing. I got to know. I got to feel secure. I've got to get all the answers. I've got to figure it out. This is something that if I were just smarter and more present and more whatever the judgments I have, I would be able to get this all sorted. And life isn't always like that. Sometimes the answers are shy. And the more you push and the more you grind and dig at them, the farther away the answers retreat. And so a practice of inquiry by just asking questions, open-ended questions, is a way of allowing wisdom, an indirect invitation. It's like inviting wisdom to come in the back door instead of the front door. And I love that. And so, a couple of questions that we were talking about last time was we were exploring the word generosity and creating space around that word and using a thesaurus, finding synonyms for the word generosity. And I was sharing with everybody some of my own stories, how I grew up, um, and how I was taught this narrative that to be a good person meant to be generous, and to be generous meant to be giving. And sometimes to be giving meant to give until I'm completely worn out without taking any time to replenish. In fact, I grew up in an environment surrounded by women where they believed that to take time to replenish themselves was being selfish. Like, the goal is to be universally, unconditionally, with limitless ability to just be selfless. Give, 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 as if it was this unlimited supply. And it was such a folly. It's such a mistake. And so to be truly selfless, I know that I have to be self aware, self centered, sometimes a little self absorbing in order to really understand myself and take care of myself. And then when I've taken good care of myself, I can put myself aside and be fully present to others. That's a practice. And so there's a lot of questioning that goes on with it. The first two in this practice of inquiry that we did last time was, do I believe that to be giving is to be good? Why do I believe that? Just something to consider. Today, I'd like to read a little section for you called Attachment and Release. Attachment and release. And before we launch into it, I just want to take a minute and invite your awareness to just entertain those two words, attachment and release. If you have a mind that's anything like mine, and I think you do, because my mind isn't particularly original, it's very human, universally human mind. I have this story that says to be attached to anything is bad and to release things is good. It's a very dualistic mindset. It's an either or, black and white kind of thing. And what I love about the Buddhist perspective and Eastern philosophy is the bothness of the perspective. Of course, I'm going to be attached to things. That by itself isn't the issue. The issue is when it comes time to release my attachment, do I cling? Or is my hand and my heart open? And if I'm honest, the answer to that is it depends. There are times where I'm attached to certain things and it's hard to release it. It's hard to let it go. I don't want to. There it is. I cling. And then there are other times where I'm attached to things and totally okay to let it go. And so, really, the practice for me is just being able to observe that and observe the conditions of that and observe how I feel about it. When I'm attached to things and I cling, I tend not to feel very good. Okay, let's look at that. Right now, the thing that's most present for me regarding this is the fire season. I'm very attached to my property and my home and all my stuff. And I hate the thought that it could all burn down and be gone. I hate the thought that that's already happened to people that I know. I can't stand the thought that there's a whole governmental system in the United States right now that doesn't isn't concerned about climate change and, in fact, is trying to deny its very existence and challenge it. And I know from my own first lived experience, I have seen the climate change. It's real. So I have to work on that. I have to practice that. And that's why I write about it. And let's see what this has to say. So I'm on page 71 if you want to read along. Attachment and release. We're going to put it in the context of recovery. Let's not be afraid to admit that it is painfully challenging to love and be present to someone who is lying to our face with another ridiculous story told through slurred speech and vacant eyes. So I'm talking about interacting with somebody who is in the throes of negative habit energy. And that's hard. So let's also not be afraid to admit that we may be attached to reacting in the same old dismissive, mean spirited, and judgmental ways, and we can release that. We can offer ourselves the generosity of space to calm down and get creative in our presence. So let's take a look at that for just a moment. Have you ever encountered somebody who is in negative habit energy? There they go again. And your reaction to them is exactly that. Well, there they go again. And your reactivity is a kind of pattern. It may be even a kind of habit energy that we're attached to. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever considered that? This is a subtle and slow aspect of peacemaking that adds clarity to those insufferable and infuriating experiences that feel strained and disheartening. Space adds softer textures when life feels rough. Sometimes we cannot stand what is happening to our loved ones. I hate that a single ill conceived act that many other people engage without consequence led my loved ones down paths that stole their options to choose more wisely. I know how sickening it is to listen to someone deny using or drinking while holding their paraphernalia. The incredulous emotions that stir to the surface can be overwhelming. Taking a step back, which is an instrument of peace, creating some space and pausing for a couple of breaths allows a moment of awareness to avoid responding habitually. In other words, rather than look away from the situation, creating new space allows us to look deeply at the truth of reality. So, friends, I'm really inviting us to be with people in the middle of their habit energy. And that person might actually be you. So, this is also a practice of being able to look at ourselves when we feel that craving, when we feel that temptation, that old familiar storytelling. Can we take a step back? Can we create some space around it to look deeply? Here's the truth of reality in this instance. My loved one is in active addiction. Their brain is complexly disordered. There is no reasoning with this level of altered state. Boundaries and clear, wise speech are acts of love. Ooh, let me say that again. Boundaries and clear, wise speech are acts of love. I am working to meet my loved ones where they are. I'm addressing my own needs too. I'm present as an expression of love and care. And that's it. That's all we're going to read today. So let's look at that. Let's play with this and bring in some angles. And we can make this applicable to somebody who is in the throes of addiction, negative habit energy, or maybe the negative habit energy isn't a substance. Maybe the negative habit energy is the mind, their mood, their mental health. How to be present to someone, how to meet them where they are without compromising oneself, how to create those strong boundaries, how to use speech that is wise, firm, clear. How to look at the attachment to patterns of reactivity and behaving and let that go for something new. Here's a great example. I think a lot of times I notice people who've got a loved one and they're in active addiction. They'll ask questions like, "Hey, have you been drinking?" And you ask a question already knowing the answer. That is a habit energy. That is a pattern of interacting that doesn't really go anywhere. So release that. You've been drinking. I can't have a clear conversation with you when you're intoxicated. That's the boundary. I see you. I see you're not doing well. Let's just be together, or we'll talk in a little while when you sober up. Let me make you a cup of coffee, or whatever it is that you want to do with this person. It's your relationship. But notice how quick that habit energy, those cycles and patterns that we have arise. And when we're in that state, there's a tiger pacing beneath us. The roots are pulling from the side of the cliff, and we tend to not see that sweet little strawberry. And this is a practice of going, wait a second, I have a moment. I can notice that something else is here. And what that something else is I can release my attachment to my own ways of doing things and try something new. even saying to a loved one or a friend, hey, I'm learning new ways to communicate. I'd like to improve my communication and be more wise. Is this a good time for you to practice with me and play with me on this one? Can we have a conversation about it? That's new. That's different. That's amazing. And it requires quite a bit of space. But we have a tendency not to do that. When we're in the throes of reactivity, what happens? Things tighten, they clamp down. We're not thinking clearly. We're panicked, probably not breathing well. And I'm going to tell you something. This is often involuntary. This is your nervous system in a full flight mode. You wouldn't you wouldn't be able to stop it if you tried. However, the moment you become aware that this is happening is the moment you can employ something new. Yesterday, I got this alert on my phone. It was the first time I'd ever had this, and it was like an Amber Alert. And it said, evacuation level 3, critical to get out now. And that was all I could read. And I, full panic mode. Fascinating. And I noticed that I couldn't think clearly. All of a sudden, I was shaking. I was thinking about getting the kennels in the car and what are the things we're going to grab, and, getting a quick to go box and get out, and, where is this fire? All of that was very secondary. And all my kids got the same thing. And so everybody kind of huddled together. Come to find out, one of my kids was a little bit clearer and said, wait a minute, this fire, they're not talking about us. This is like a county-wide alert. Deep breath. I could have stayed attached to the panic. I did for a little bit, and then slowly started to release it with understanding, information, presence. The same is true whenever we're encountering difficult, sticky situations with challenging people, whether it's because of negative habit energy, personality issues, conflicts, whatever it is. Notice the attachment. Notice the clamping. Breathe. Ask yourself, what else is here? Is there a strawberry that I'm not seeing? Can I savor that little moment of sweetness enough to restore me, to give me courage? Maybe in this story of the roots falling out and that person eating the strawberry, maybe in that moment of plucking that strawberry, they've shifted their body enough that there's a ledge that appears out of nowhere. But if they had just clung to those roots and not done anything else, not noticed the strawberry, they wouldn't have noticed the ledge. The same is true in our own lives. So let's practice that a little bit together. Let's create some space together. And what I'd like you to do is find a posture in your body that feels really at ease. And if you can, try to be a little active today in your posture. Sometimes it's nice to lie down. And if you've been lying down and you're nice and comfy, that's fine. But if you are feeling a little bit energized, go ahead and sit up. And if you're sitting on an office chair, Sit at the edge of the chair or couch. If you can get down to the floor, even sitting on a pillow or a cushion, and cross your legs, that's great. And if you have to sit where your back is supported, so you're leaning against a wall, that's okay. Notice where your hands are. And allow your hands to be an anchor, a weight. And see if you can notice the connection between your hands and your shoulders. And rather than curl your shoulders kind of forward where the spine is in sort of a slouchy C shape, see if you can roll those shoulders back, maybe one at a time, just to really feel it. And allow the weight of the shoulders and the relaxation through the arms, all the way through the elbows and forearms, all of it centered at the level of the hands, and feel the weight ground. Take a deep breath so you feel the rib cage expand. Lift your chest a little bit. Rest the tongue just behind your front teeth on the roof of your mouth as you inhale and exhale. Lift your eyebrows, smile, and then feel your face relax a little bit. All of these little points of contact and thresholds of awareness on the body to concentrate your attention, to settle the body, and to create some stillness. This is done for the sole purpose of creating an environment for the mind to wander. And your mind can have any thoughts that it's going to have. But I am going to give it a little bit of focus. And what I'd like you to focus on is, what are you holding on to? Is there an attachment that you're clinging to? It could be something material. It could be a thought or a fear. And rather than judge the attachment, because that's not what the point is of this practice. It's not about trying to tell the mind that having an attachment is bad and the whole point is to release it. That is not helpful. To be human is to have attachments, to understand the relationship to those attachments. That's the spiritual practice. And in order to understand the relationship to the attachment, it's simply a matter of getting curious about it. What is this attachment? What are the conditions motivating it? What's the story I'm telling myself about this attachment? What would it feel like to cling 1 degree less, just 1 degree. As I add some ease, what else is here? And that's the thing about the miracle of life and the miracle of presence and the miracle of mindfulness is there's always something else. And the irony is it's not always pleasant. It often can be. You know, you're clinging for dear life and there appears a strawberry. But there are times in our lives where we're clinging for dear life and there's a scorpion or some creepy crawly or a bee or, that can happen. And what else is there? On the other side of that scorpion is, oh my gosh, it's a beautiful little violet. Or a new handhold. There's always something else. What else is there? And friends, why this is such an essential practice, at least to me, is I have over the years cultivated this habit of seeing the negative habit energy in my loved ones and and defining my loved one by that negative habit energy. It's as if they become the negative habit themselves. It's as if that's all I see. And so this is a retraining that there's always more. There's always something else. It might be subtle, it might be slightly hidden, and it's always there. But I cannot see it if I cling. I can only see it if I release just a little. We are so much more than our worst definitions and our best definitions. We are all, each of us, beyond what can be defined. friends. On a personal level, I've had a couple of really tender days, and I've been quite clamped down in my mind and in my heart. And just in this practice of being able to share with you and the courtesy of your presence and your listening ears and your open hearts and mind, I was able to hear myself say, we are all, each of us, beyond defining what can be defined. And I so needed to hear that. I love this practice of space because sometimes, I just clear away the debris, all the noise, all the muddledness of my own mind. And there the clarity comes through. It never fails. It's quite extraordinary. So thank you for that. Together, I'd like to take a deep breath. Breathing in the ways we hold on and cling. Breathing out, remembering the subtle beauties vying for our attention. Breathing in, gripping, tightening, attachment. Breathing out, release. And doing this in partnership, doing this in relationship to one another, not judgment, not trading one for the other, with, like a breath, breathing in, expanding, breathing out, contracting. The two together make the breath. The two together make life. On creating Satiseva and really working with this is having family members who had very serious substance use disorders. My dad, for instance. And just the familial dynamic, how to be with my dad while he was actively misusing alcohol, and how to just love him where he was, as he was, how to work with my own habit energy of insisting that he not do that, that he not be himself, that he try to do something different, and getting frustrated because he wouldn't. He just wouldn't. So there's a boundary there. There's my dad in his space doing himself, and there's me in my space doing myself. And how do I take care of me as I bear witness to someone that I love doing something that I don't think they should be doing? That's the whole deal. That's the whole thing. How can I bear witness to that? How can I be with that? How can I look at myself and just love my dad exactly as he is, even unto his death? It's not an easy thing to do. And it's a constant practice, and there were so many opportunities. So I want to thank you all. One of the things that I picked up on and heard quite a bit today was grief. And in the Satiseva 16 mindfulness practices, there's a whole chapter on grief, and just all the ways that we grieve, all the faces of grief that we carry, and it's always worth looking into. All righty, friends, let's see. We meet again on Sunday for Satiseva at 11 o'clock. And we're going to meet for Recovery Dharma in about 25 minutes. We're going to sign off and then we'll come back. Please check out the Soul Center website for all the goodies that we've got going on there. You know, I took a whole bunch of these sentiments of metta that I've painted, and I made them, I took pictures of all of this art. And then I made them into these giant sheets and I printed sentiments of metta on the back. I had them printed and I put 31 of them together in a little bag. And so you can pick one a month on your own. And several artists from the community were involved. And there's a little card that describes them. And I've sent out a whole bunch. So hopefully there are people here today that receive them or should be. Yes, good. Okay, good, Michael. I'm so glad. So yeah, and it's just another wonderful way to support this community, support this effort, share the whole ritual of creating an intention for the day. You know, may I stand at precarious edges and notice the strawberries. You know, one of the precarious edges is life right now sucks. It's really, really hard and I hate it. Like, that's a reality. And maybe the strawberry is that this suckiness is not as sucky as it was 2 years ago. You know, like maybe that's what we're going for. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, you know, but again, that's reframing and reimagining. It's like, wow, it is better. It is different. I'm different. This is a slow, slow evolution. So keep practicing, friends. And if you don't have the Satiseva book, you can order it through Soul Center. You can also order it online. If you order it through Soul Center, I'll send you a signed copy and I'll guessy it up for you. If you order it online, I, you know, if you live out of the country, that's pretty much the way you need to do it. I'm always really grateful when people leave reviews. That does help get the word out. It seems like such a simple thing, but if you have the energy and the time to put a review on Amazon or Goodreads or share it in social media, this really is a way of getting a self-published book out there. And I'm so grateful because I think the things that we are bringing forward are not only reimagining how we work with our own habit energy and the habit energy of others, but how we imagine our whole lives. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and end our practice with a dedication of merit. And one of the things that I'd like to do in our dedication is I'd like to call on Tara, the goddess of compassion. And I'd like to invite us to take refuge in the limitless capacity to Tara's compassion. And I'd like to dedicate the goodness, the merit of this practice, our ability to be inquisitive and curious, our capacity to be open and expansive, our ability to say, yeah, you know, would you look at that? And would you look at this? They may be contradictory. Huh, wow, look at that. Life is complex. And one of the ways we can approach the prickliness of complexity is to cultivate and tap into the limitless quality of compassion, karuna. So I'm just going to chant this beautiful chant to Tara. Om Tare tu re soha. Om Tare tu re soha.